मान्य सभासदों, मान्य उप सभापति जी, now yes, you didn't finish your speech? No? Okay, if you are not finished, then how much time?
So, Deputy Chairman, sir, I was forced to
Look at the display board.
Sir, now few more
17 minutes is your time, parties, it is over. Okay.
No, sir.
You are starting from 0. You can go up to 17.
Now 0, sir.
You can go up to 17.
A maiden speech.
No.
As a member.
No. You are minister here.
I spoke earlier. Then I will not take more time, sir.
2-3 minutes.
Few things. I was talking about the power sector when I was asked to sit down and again assemble after lunch. Fortunately, Dr. Manmohan Singh ji, our former Prime Minister, is also here. The issue of coal shortages, which the Power Minister was mentioning, just I think today's newspaper and yesterday's couple of days, it has been coming that there is no coal. There are only 2 days coal availability and you should import coal to the state utilities, to NTPC, and that is the way you can fulfill those shortages. Suddenly there was a statement again which said, no, we never said there is any coal shortage. And so whatever it may be, the fact is that to produce more power, more coal is required. And the fact is that while you have very laudable targets of achieving higher energy production, there is no roadmap. An intent, a statement of intent, I don't think is enough to suddenly change the power scenario or the entire sectoral outlook in this country. Gas prices, oil prices, petroleum product prices, your own statements from the government have emanated that we are deferring it by a few more months, we will take decision. Probably you have the elections to Maharashtra and other states in mind, and that is why it is more a political decision rather than any decision based on any fiscal prudence or discipline. The fact of the matter is that the economy is not, as I'm just trying to recap because I have started again, that while we talked of fiscal prudence and bringing the fiscal deficit down to 4.1%, there is no sign at all in the entire budget exercise which shows signs of an expansion of the economy, thereby which the fiscal deficit can be contained until and unless you slash planned expenditure, slash all forms of expenditure and try to, in a way, contract the economy and achieve a fiscal deficit of 4.1%. Many things which have been mentioned. The road minister this morning, again was trying to say that there is no PPP project available, takers for PPP projects in the road sector. So what is the objective? How are you going to bring this entire exercise back on track and attract higher level of investment? You have, since Sharad Pawarji has just come, my leader, again for the refreshing the memory of the House and Javadekar ji who was not there, I am just going to say one more thing, very important, that during the time of Dr. Manmohan Singh ji and Sharad Pawar ji in the Agriculture Ministry and at the Government of India's level, special emphasis was laid for the agricultural sector. And that is why we achieved the highest production of food grains in the country in the year 2013-14. Highest, 269 million tons. Agricultural credit was 85,000 crores in 2004, which was expanded to 7,50,000 crores in 2013, and which this year has been enhanced to 8 lakh crores, which is a good thing and continue to do so. But the fact is that the kind of emphasis, because in our country we have disproportionate number of people living and their livelihood is based on agriculture compared to the number of people which in other developed economies have more people have livelihoods on goods, services and other sectors rather than on agriculture. And therefore in a rural economy like ours, we have to do that much more. You have, I'm not repeating because most of the things I have said earlier, but one thing is certain, that on the housing sector you have sought to lay a lot of emphasis. And you have said that you are having a national housing bank which is going to be given a corpus initially of I think 4,000 crores, and you have mentioned a lot of things about the urban renewal mission. But the smart city concept which I mentioned earlier, I really fail to understand what is the definition of a smart city, and therefore please explain to us, because I think this become like a buzzword. One smart city, like one aims to this city and one IIT to this state, one smart city to Jammu, one to Kashmir, one to Telangana, one here. A lot of people have been mentioning about smart cities. I think the concept needs to be very clear rather than just one other smart sentence or a statement. I think it needs to be defined, and we must, why not have one smart city in the country as a model? You can do it in 1 year or 2 years. Dholera to begin with. Dholera, there is already the land, the airport was sanctioned by us, everything else is, the port, everything is there. So I think Dholera can be one of the first smart cities. Let the Gujarat model start from Dholera and be expanded to all over the country. I think that will be something very laudable. Sir, I am just going to complete, sir. I was interrupted, so my flow of thoughts really gets pushed behind, sir. The other thing is, good that you have opened up the defense sector for further foreign direct investment, as well as there may be many views, contrary views also, but I think Dr. Manmohan Singh's time, we started this process of 26% FDI. Also, certain projects could have higher FDI if it was approved by a certain committee at the highest level. And so you are expanding on that idea. I think it is a good thing. India needs, and for very small things we are dependent on imports of our defense equipment. I think those things are very, very easily available or can be produced in our country. And I think it would boost manufacturing, it would create jobs, it would also reduce our dependence on imports. And I think this is a laudable step, and we should pursue this idea even more aggressively. And it is important from our strategic point of view also that more and more defense production for home consumption as well as for exports, we can do it in ourselves. I think on the direct taxes and all, what you have done is just a little bit of appeasement to our middle class, but really actually net terms, if you really look at the higher cost of living, the inflation and the other high interest rates, I think it really means nothing in terms of money in the hand to an individual. And therefore, while on one side you have taken a lot of credit for having given something back to the middle class of our country, I think in an era of high interest rates, inflation, I think what you have actually given back was actually a reduction actually from what would have actually come in their hand. I would only like to say that on our energy sector, whether it is gas, whether it's oil, petroleum products, I think we really need to have a very aggressive roadmap for that sector. 70% plus is imported even today. Over the years, a lot of investments have been made both by the public sector and the private sector. But I do not think that India has really yet been able to develop or exploit its fullest potential in the area of natural resource and especially in petroleum and gas. And therefore, I think we need to take much more, I would say, aggressive decisions on that front and bring in much more investment, because it just does not help the sector with the kind of uncertainties. There are so many projects which have been delayed, so many projects which are even power projects which are ready and up, but they do not have the necessary gas or the other fuel for running them. So my suggestion is that we need to pursue the oil and gas sector in a much more aggressive way. Sir, I will end here, but only I would say that in a overall context, the budget has nothing new to offer. It has continuity, but it does not have, I would say, anything radical to, as at least the government has promised, to give a dynamic change or a radical change for the people of our country. I would say we'll wait for many years. We have decided to wait for 5 years. The people have told us we will wait for that. But nonetheless, I think certain areas of the economy like insurance, which you have talked of, you would like to expand the insurance sector by bringing in more FDI. I think that is a welcome move. We have, at least my party would not have any hesitation in supporting further opening up of the insurance sector, the pensions fund, because these are ultimately the areas from where we will be able to get the maximum money for our long-term infrastructure projects.
Yes,
with these words, sir, I would only like to say, and a little word of caution to the government, that while you have given us a budget, you please give us a little bit more hope and a little bit more, I would say, material and physical delivery of the laudable objectives with which you have given the budget to the country. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Sri KTS Tulsi.
Honorable Deputy Chairman.
How many minutes you want to take?
So this is my maiden speech.
So 15,
whatever time you like.
15 minutes.
Very well, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Honorable Deputy Chairman, I am extremely grateful for giving me the opportunity and the honor of addressing this House and deliver the maiden speech. I consider myself extremely fortunate to be nominated by the President of India, and I do hope that I am able to maintain the high traditions of this august House and also serve as a worthy member. I have great personal regard for the leader of the House, and we have been close friends at the bar. In fact, in 1990, when I came here as the Additional Solicitor General, it was he who received me because it was his room which was allocated to me, and I managed to have somehow chased him into the Parliament. I would like to say that I am greatly mesmerized by his speech. उनके अंदाज़े बयां का कायल हूँ, और उनके लिए एक शेर कहना चाहता हूँ कि जो आए नहीं हैं, लोकसभा में हैं, कि उनका अंदाज़े बयां रंग बदल देता है, वरना दुनिया में कोई बात भी नई बात नहीं। मेरा इस सदन में सिंगल पॉइंट एजेंडा होगा कि किसी तरह से क्रिमिनल जस्टिस सिस्टम को पटरी पर लाया जाए, बिकॉज क्रिमिनल जस्टिस सिस्टम and the entire judicial system in general, but criminal justice system in particular, is drowning in the sea of delays. I am extremely concerned about the inadequate allocation of funds to the entire justice system. If there is rampant corruption in the country, it is because we are unable to decide cases in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I myself am handling cases where charges have not been framed for over 10 years. This kind of a system can only lead to the complete collapse of values. And the only ray of hope, to my mind, seemed to be to modernize the police station in the country. Every police station needs to be modernized. India is no longer a third world country. We can have automatic recording of the telephone lines of every police station in this country. We can have state-of-the-art interrogation rooms in every police station where the statements of witnesses are recorded with the aid of tamper-proof technology. And today, if the conviction rate is so abysmal, it is because the statements written by semi-literate sub-inspectors or below carry hardly any credibility with the courts. There is no way that if there is such a low conviction rate, it is primarily because the witnesses find it very convenient to resile from the statements that have been recorded by the police. But if these very statements were recorded with the aid of tamper-proof technology, perhaps we will be able to push up the conviction rate, because unless the conviction rate goes up, there is going to be no compliance of the laws. We need to have a relook at the Whistleblowers Protection Act, and the Whistleblowers Protection Act, unless it is extended to the private sector, is going to be meaningless, because most of the corruption is generated through the big business. We need extensive witness protection program. There is virtually no expenditure allocated for witness protection program, and witnesses, honest witnesses, are becoming more and more hard to come by. Honorable Deputy Chairman, I am greatly disappointed with the allocation of 0.4% in the budget for law and justice. The Honorable Finance Minister indicates in his speech that they want to establish more courts. How are you going to establish more courts with 0.4% allocation? The total allocation for 14-15 is 1205 crore, which is significantly less than the allocation in the last year's budget, which was 1973 crore. Where is the intent to implement the promise of more courts? The Honorable Finance Minister, in his earlier tenure as a law minister, was the author of a new innovative venture, and that is the fast-track courts. The fast-track courts in 10 years, there are over 1,000 fast-track courts in the country, but in 10 years they have disposed of 3.2 million cases, whereas the country is reeling, the judiciary is reeling under the burden of 32 million cases. In 10 years, if all that the fast-track courts have been able to achieve are 3 million cases, it is extremely disappointing, and there seems to be no ray of hope with the reduced allocation for law and justice. I want to say that this allocation includes the expenditure on 40 odd tribunals. And what is the allocation provided for the tribunals? The Income Tax Appellate Tribunal got 4 crore more last year, and this year the allocation is reduced. The National Tax Tribunal is allocated a measly sum of 5 lakh. The Appellate Tribunal for Foreign Exchange received 8.25 crore, and this year the allocation is 25 lakh more than the last year. I submit that there is a serious problem with our judiciary, and that is, out of 17,715 posts of judges, the sanctioned strength of judges in the country is 17,715. There is something seriously wrong with the system of appointments of judges, because more than 3,300 of these posts are vacant. How can we have expeditious disposal of cases when there is so much of gap between the judges who are in position and the judges who are sanctioned. Besides, there is a wide gap in the infrastructure that is provided to justice system as compared to the other sectors. It is because of the neglect. The question is, a nation is judged. The civilization of the nation, whether the nation is civilized and to what extent is judged by the criminal justice system, the efficacy of the criminal justice system. And if we are unable to decide even the guilt or innocence of persons for decades, I would submit that we cannot call ourselves a civilized nation if we don't pay attention and give a higher priority to law and justice. Criminal justice is paralyzed as a result of the gross neglect. The paralysis of criminal courts gives criminals a free hand. The law has lost its efficacy. There is no fear of the law. It's become low risk, high profit business. And that's why the nation is reeking with corruption and scandals and general mayhem. There are mounting areas. There are cognizable offences of the criminal cognizable cases pending in the country is to the tune of 1 crore 87 lakh. And 66 lakh of these cases are filed in 2013 alone. The trial in 2013 was completed in the case of about 47 lakh cases, which means that we are adding to the areas every year. There is no hope of these areas being removed unless we find some innovative solution. The mounting areas result in the pendency of 95,000 cases of rape pending in the country, 1,70,000 murder cases, serious crimes pending in the country, 4 lakh cases under 498A, that is cruelty to women. Rising pendency has resulted in both civil and criminal cases to the tune of 3.2 crore. I would like to mention to you the crime clock of our country. The crime clock is that one crime is committed against a woman every 2 minutes. Of course, it's a billion plus country, but one crime against women is committed every 2 minutes. A molestation takes place every 12 minutes. A rape every 22 minutes. A dowry death, no one can feign or fake dowry death. A dowry death takes place every 61 minutes. And in every 5 minutes there is a case of cruelty registered in some police station or the other in the country. Most sad part of the story is that in our country, the prisons, the total strength of our prisons is 3,20,000. And the gross abuse of human rights takes place because of the overcrowding in our prisons, where we have to pack 3,68,000 or 69,000 of prisoners in these jails which are meant for far less number of people. But the worst is that 65% of the prison population in the country is of under trials who are awaiting the decision about their guilt or innocence, and many of them manage to completely serve out their sentence. They are so poor that they cannot afford bail. The monetary system in bails has to go because it operates against the poor. They cannot offer even 1,000 rupees of bail. They virtually serve out the sentence, and then there is no one left in the family. I want to submit that this state of affairs is resulting in two things. The conviction rate is steadily coming down, and the crime rate is steadily going up. It's a recipe for disaster if we don't rectify the situation. I want to tell you that the conviction rate is determined by the National Crime Record Bureau on the basis of number of persons charge sheeted, and therefore they manage to show a higher rate of conviction. But if you take into account the number of persons arrested for cognizable offences and number of persons convicted, we find that the conviction rate is far lower, perhaps as low as 6.4%. And we find that in 1913 there were 3,613 cases which were registered in 2011. In relation to these, only 1,103 were convicted, and so therefore even with these statistics there were only 19% convictions, which means that all that you have to do for the accused is to delay the process, and with the delay of the process the witnesses get tired, and that's what results in so abysmal conviction rate. The disposal rate again by the courts is so poor that we keep on adding. This is resulting in mob rule. I would only like to give to you a few of the examples of the mob rule, and that is, in Bihar we found a man is beaten to death who suspected of theft of a bicycle. In Champaran, 2 kidnappers were lynched. The robbers are occasionally beaten to death. People have no patience with the courts now. If we don't speed up the criminal justice system, there's going to be a serious problem. What are the solutions? I submit that firstly, the wrong solutions which we have been following over the years. 5 minutes, sir. The wrong solutions are more deterrent punishment. The more deterrent punishment, lower is the conviction rate. We have been putting restrictions on bail. That hardly serves, that only militates against liberty. Reversal of burden of proof goes against the constitutional spirit. Increase the number of judges. Mere increase in the number of judges is not going to help unless we improve infrastructure. It is said that in India, we have 10.5 million judges, 10.5 judges per million. The world ratio is 50 judges. But if we compare the judge-docket ratio, in the United States, a judge disposes of 3,235 cases in a year, whereas an Indian judge disposes of 987 cases. It's not that Indian judges are any inferior, it's only because they lack the infrastructure, and the infrastructure that is provided to them is only that of a bullock cart, and that's the speed at which they will go. We need to modernize the police station, and we also need to modernize the courts. The courts must have the automatic recording facility of the evidence. That is what will discipline the courts, and the courts also must have simultaneous transcription. Now these are the facilities which are available the world over. India is an IT superpower. There is no reason why we can't provide these facilities to our courts. We need to have, every police station needs to be provided with a mobile forensic van. It's a mobile forensic van which will go to the spot, because one document, one scientific evidence that is collected is equal to 100 witnesses. Mobile forensic van must accompany the homicide team to the spot, and then the conviction rate can significantly go up. I am extremely grateful for this opportunity. I do hope that one day we'll be able to significantly improve our criminal justice system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tulsi. Very useful for all of us.
Very informative also.
Yeah, very informative also. Now, please. Now, next in line is Sri Rajiv Chandrasekhar. But before I calling him, I am calling Sri Sanjeev Kumar, because he wants to catch up the train. After him, I will call you.
Thank you.
Take 5 minutes only, eh?
7 minutes, madam. Sir. 7 minutes. Honorable Deputy Chairman, sir, as a representative of this House from Jharkhand, issues relating to forest and forest use is a matter of deep concern and interest to me. Way back in December 2013, I had raised the issue of how the ad hoc Compensatory Afforestation Fund Management and Planning Authority, in short CAMPA, was dealing with the issues relating to management of funds and the parliamentary oversight in this regard. It has come to my notice that the CAG has tabled a report on compensatory afforestation in India in Parliament in September 2013. It has dealt extensively with a number of issues relating to the regulatory failures in diversion of forest land, non-short recovery of over 5,000 crores of funds for compensatory afforestation, poor utilization of funds released by ad hoc CAMPA to states. Serious as the issues posed by the CAG in his report may be, I today, both as a parliamentarian and as a member of the legal fraternity, want to draw the attention of the finance minister and the government to a far more serious and fundamental issue that the report has flagged in the context of the debate on the general budget for financial year 2014-15. At the outset, I would like to quote from the Constitution of India, Article 1143 of the Constitution enjoins, subject to the provisions of Article 115 and 116, no money shall be withdrawn from the Consolidated Fund of India except under appropriation made by law passed in accordance with the provisions of this article. The Constitution is clear and unambiguous on the issue of authorization of expenditure. All expenditure, including a single rupee, has to be authorized by Parliament. Members will be surprised with what has been said by the CAG regarding the manner in which expenditure on compensatory afforestation is currently being incurred. I quote from 6.3 of the report of the CAG, Union Government number 21 of 2013. The institutional design for incurring expenditure from the CAF under ad hoc CAMPA and by state CAMPA is somewhat distinct from the expenditure being incurred by both the union government and the state government. In the case of expenditure being currently incurred by ad hoc CAMPA and by a state CAMPA, there is no legislative authorization for the incurrence of such expenditure. The money in the fund is kept out of Consolidated Fund of India based on the directions oblique orders of the Supreme Court, and the expenditure is incurred without authorization from the Parliament. The Court passed its orders in 2002 when the quantum of expenditure was negligible during the initial years. Now, by the end of March 2012, the expenditure incurred was 1775.84 crore against release of 2829.21 crore. Given the large amounts being collected from user agencies under compensatory afforestation under the provisions of Forest Act 1980 and in the context of objectives of CAMPA, it may be necessary to review the existing institutional design in consonance with the constitutional scheme with regard to the authorization of incurring of expenditure on CAMPA related activities by approaching the Supreme Court where considered necessary. This fact of expenditure not being authorized by Parliament as per the scheme laid down in the Constitution would clearly have been known to the concerned ministry. The Ministry of Environment and Forest, the Finance Ministry, after the submission of this report of the CAG, would also be aware of the fact of this serious constitutional breach. Chairman, Deputy Chairman, sir, I would like to know from the government how and why the appropriation bill for financial year 2014-15 continues to exclude expenditure authorization of thousands of crores of rupees relating to Kempa.
5 minutes हो गया.
5 minutes over, no? 2 minutes are...
Yes, 2 more minutes.
सर 67 साल हो गए हैं आज़ादी के बाद. कहा जाता है कि झारखंड जो है बहुत रिच स्टेट है. हम 32% कोयले का जो है सो टोटल रिजर्व देश को देते हैं. हम 26% जो है सो टोटल रिजर्व देश का देते हैं. हम बॉक्साइट देते हैं, हम तांबा देते हैं, हम कॉपर देते हैं, हम क्ले माइन देते हैं. लेकिन 67 साल के आज़ादी के बाद भी झारखंड का बहुत बजट आया गया. उसके बाद भी झारखंड का स्थिति ऐसी है कि न्यूज़पेपर में अगर यदि कोई पढ़ते हैं कि किसी मेड या सर्वेंट के साथ अत्याचार हुआ है तो नेक्स्ट लाइन में आएगा कि वो जरूर झारखंड का है, और झारखंड के आने के बाद नेक्स्ट लाइन में आएगा कि ये ट्राइबल का है. तो मेरा कहना है कि जो हम लोग जितने भी कोल और माइंस देते हैं उसके बाद जो पॉल्यूशन होता है उसके रिजल्ट स्वरूप जो अस्थमा, कैंसर और टीबी होता है, तो जितने कोयला और माइंस के बदले हम लोगों को कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी फंड से पैसा मिलता है वो हम लोग इलाज के लिए खत्म कर देते हैं. और अभी सरकार ने बहुत दिन के बाद एक अच्छा सुझाव दिया है कि 3 मेडिकल कॉलेजेस खोले जाएंगे झारखंड में. मैं उनका स्वागत करता हूं. साथ में ये भी उम्मीद जताता हूं कि कहीं ये विशेष राज्य देने का वादा के तरह जो है सो वादा बन के नहीं रह जाए. और सरकार को मैं फिर से याद दिला देना चाहता हूं कि अभी चुनाव के समय बहुत बड़े बड़े वादे किए गए थे अच्छे दिन लाने का, और झारखंड में भी बोला गया था आपका अच्छा दिन आएगा, आपको जो है सो विशेष राज्य का दर्जा देंगे. मैं हाउस से जो है सो आपको याद दिलाना चाहता हूं कि झारखंड का अच्छा दिन थोड़ा सा भी लाने के लिए जो आपने वादा किया है कि विशेष राज्य का झारखंड को दर्जा दीजिएगा, कृपया इसको जल्दी पूरा कीजिए. धन्यवाद.
धन्यवाद. श्री राजीव चंद्रशेखर.
Sir, thank you, sir. I rise to support the budget. Sir, the finance minister starts with an economy that has been left very weak and vulnerable by a scorched earth management of the economy. These are not my words, sir. These are from a former chief economic advisor. With 12 quarters of successive GDP declines and 24 quarters of successive inflation growth. Gross capital formation has declined in the last 2 years, for the first time in few years breaching 30%, and an unprecedented trust deficit between the government and investors, with investors having lost more than 6,80,000 crores in PSU stocks alone over the last 3 years. Sir, this budget is really the first step in the difficult process of rebuilding the economy. It must be seen in that context. For most part of the last decade, the focus has been on growth through the consumption economy, with investments being a lower priority. The evidence for this is very clear. With 7,95,000 crores of projects stuck in the pipeline, it is clear that investments were a secondary priority to the consumption economy. Sir, the chief economic advisor last year mentioned in the economic survey what most of us had been arguing for several years, that the 2008 stimulus was fraud and aimed at the easy solution of a consumption economy rather than the more difficult model of growth through investments. So, sir, in a nutshell, that's where we are today, at the bottom of a mountain that looks daunting, but that needs to be climbed and conquered. This budget, sir, to use a mountaineering metaphor, is like a base camp. Low on theatrics and more about the fundamental and structural issues of organizing and planning the real climb ahead. So, sir, I have no hesitation in endorsing this budget as a good, solid first step. Sir, let me congratulate the finance minister for saying in the other house that he is pro-business and pro-poor. There is no political and economic contradiction in this, and I hasten to point this out to my friends on the left, that this is really what this country needs: a steadfast commitment to investments and growth, and a break from the politicking of the poor and dividing the same small pie into thinner and thinner slices to make it go around. Instead, a strategy of growing the size of the pie so there are more slices and bigger slices to distribute to those who need help and support out of their deprivation and poverty. I congratulate him, sir, for saying that he does not believe in creating liabilities for future generations. This is an important statement for the youth and future generations of the country. Sir, I will speak about two specific issues, sir. My colleagues have spoken at length about all the positives of the budget. Sir, the first issue I want to touch upon is this issue of public investments. There is a total of 15 lakh crores of public money invested in 277 central public enterprises. For years, many of these PSUs have been mismanaged and the public equity in these put to losses. There is very little public discussion about the performance of the public's money that has been invested into these companies. For example, sir, a company like BSNL, which 5 years ago was worth 50,000 crores, is now run into losses. There must be some explanation and investigation of what causes this, and the finance minister needs to depart from the UPA strategy of blindly investing more and more taxpayer and public money without fundamental restructuring of these companies and managements. Sir, for too long the cycle was one to put public money into PSEs, mismanage, loot, lose money, put more public money in this cycle of infamy will continue, sir. So I believe, sir, the finance minister has an opportunity to break this cycle once and for all. So the other area I want to talk about is public sector banks. My colleagues Vijay Goelji and then Naresh Agarwal ji has also referred to this issue. In recent times, sir, the financial sector, and in particular the banking sector in India, has begun to resemble something from Alice in Wonderland, with the banks in particular looking like piggy banks for the rich and powerful. The sharp rise in NPAs and the fall in their profitability have not been challenged or questioned enough. The NPAs have gone up alarmingly in the last 3 years, and there is a direct loss in the value of public equity and taxpayers' money in these banks. The finance minister has mentioned recapitalizing the banks with 2.4 lakh crores. This is a significant investment of public money. This capitalization, sir, must be accompanied with significant restructuring and reorganizing of these banks, especially about how they are managed in areas of risk and credit assessment. I accept that in some cases the PSBs are holding the can for flawed government sectoral policies because they are directed to lend in the name of infrastructure development and then coerced to give the go-by to normal prudent lending norms. But sir, most importantly, we have a strange situation in India today where the top 10 industrial houses have borrowed up to 95% of the banking system's net worth, creating for themselves a very comfortable too big to fail situation in an unprecedented concentration of risk. So this creates two serious issues that the House must debate, and I hope the finance minister will look into. Firstly, sir, at a time when we need to create hundreds and thousands of new entrepreneurs, it seems that the same industrial groups are cornering all the capital and opportunities. Second, sir, the phenomenon of big businessmen glibly escaping the responsibility of repaying personally guaranteed loans while banks pounce on small and middle income families and SMEs who default on their home, car, two-wheeler, farming, education loans and other loans exposes the double standards in public sector banking. This is neither tenable nor acceptable and constitutes a severe moral hazard of the worst kind, made even worse when these businessmen are in positions of influence and some in parliament. The public sector banking system here needs reforms, and I hope the finance minister addresses this issue before committing further capital and public money to it, sir. So let me come to the last point, sir, which is the issue of private capital and PPPs. Sir, I believe private capital has a big role to play in the growth of our economy and country. Here is another area where the finance minister needs to make some significant changes from the UPA. Most of the PPPs seem to be one-sided deals that have resulted in windfall gains to the private sector. The CAG reports on PPPs in petroleum, gas, airports, railways, telecom have all raised serious questions of transparency, fairness, propriety, and in several cases questions of outright manipulation and corruption. Just a reading of one of these reports, sir, is enough to make you wonder about how people are getting away with brazen violations at the cost of the government and the taxpayer and creating a culture of crony capitalism that has been much written about and spoken about in this house as well, sir. If you give me a membership. So there are two important effects of this PPP approach. I'll take just a few more minutes, sir. One is that the public and the government side of the PPP always loses. So there is a real risk that public opinion will start opposing PPPs. And the other, sir, is that genuine investors will stay away given the taint and the lack of transparency of doing business through PPPs in India. So my suggestion to the finance minister, sir, would be to focus on making projects investment grade, where equity and debt flow into these projects naturally because of their viability and risk mitigated nature, and not by directing PSBs to lend, because directed lending, sir, may create an asset in the short term, but it will create problems in the banking sector in the future. The finance minister, sir, must remember he is the joint custodian of the economy, but the sole custodian of the financial sector. The Chinese wall between these, to use an unfortunate phrase, needs to be respected if you are not to damage the banking system, as was done all these years. Sir, I quote from the BJP manifesto, and I quote, PPP should be encouraged, an institutional network will be established, while regulators will be given autonomy and accountability, end quote. The finance minister, sir, is already aware of my strong views on the need to create independent regulatory institutions to make investors confident of investing in long-term projects, so I will not say anything more about this, sir. Let me end, sir, by saying the joke in India now, sir, is if you are a business and you want to make money, and I'm using my Hindi, sir, पैसा बनाना है तो पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक से पैसा लो, वापस मत दो, या तो गवर्नमेंट के साथ PPP करो. This is the recipe for success, business success in India, sir, and that must change. Entrepreneurship and wealth creation is important for our economy, but the policies must be reoriented to ensure that success is a result of hard work, innovation and creativity, rather than contacts and connections in Delhi, sir. Yes. I'll just end, sir.
Now conclude, please. Good
Sir,
point.
let me end with a message for the finance minister, modifying a Bill Clinton quote. And I quote, no generation has had the opportunity that you have to build an economy that leaves no one behind. It is a wonderful opportunity, but also a profound responsibility. End quote, sir. I wish him all the best. Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much. Yes. Important points for the finance minister to take note of. Dr. Karan Singh.
Mr. Deputy Sir, my colleague Sri Anand Sharma has already made an incisive speech on the budget, as have other members of the House. I rise simply to bring to the notice of the government and the House two specific matters flowing from the finance minister's speech. The first is this whole question of linking of rivers. It sounds very impressive. I remember the idea was mooted 60 years ago by Dr. K.L. Rao, who was in the Council of Ministers of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. But now it seems the government is seriously doing this. Environmentalists, hydrologists and economists around the world have expressed deep concern at the irreversible damage that this sort of a mega project can do to the country's environment and to the whole hydrological picture underwater and underground and above ground of our water resources. Massive civil works will be involved, lakhs of people will be uprooted, vast sums of money will be required, settlement of uprooted people, even in the dams that we made at the early years of independence. Even the Bhakra Dam and the Pong Dam people have still not been fully rehabilitated. Can you imagine how many lakhs of people will be displaced as a result of this sort of a project? So I just want to read one paragraph from a water expert, a scientist. He says, and I quote, "Rivers have an ecological identity of their own, regardless of the human stakeholder interest. The river, its catchment and basin, is a water course made by nature over evolutionary time of tens of millions of years, which once damaged cannot be reclaimed. Human intervention is never foolproof. Tampering with nature has always resulted in unforeseen injury and adversity of rivers. The backbone of a river water policy must highlight the non-invasive use of rivers, which will be irrevocably and irretrievably injured if we go in for the interlinking." So I must urge that the government try and look for alternative methodologies, the better use of existing rivers, preventing their growing pollution, such as the Ganga and the Jamuna, water harvesting and so on. But please be aware that these massive sort of Stalinist and Maoist type of projects are no longer now acceptable by the forward-thinking people. Now what is needed are much more carefully thought out, much more carefully prepared projects which can deal with individual rivers, but not with this huge idea of linking one river in the north all the way to the south, thereby destroying on the way unlimited amount of land and populations. So please proceed on this with caution. I'm raising a note of caution on this river valleys because this was, the river waters mentioned specifically in the finance minister's speech. So the second point that I'm raising is this question of population stabilization. Apparently this has fallen off our radar, totally ignored in the President's address, in the Finance Minister's address. Our annual exponential growth is still 1.63%, which works out to 2 crores of people every year. That is the population of one Australia. So we are adding one Australia every year to the population of India. How much pressure it is putting on our resources. Our Kisans are doing a fabulous job, but there is a limit also to the amount they can do. Our water resources, our food resources, our population education resources, our employment resources. It is quite astounding that we are not being able to bring down the rate further.
There is
all the developing countries now, sir.
There is no effort in that direction.
That's what I'm saying. There is no effort whatsoever in that direction. All the 5 paragraphs of the finance minister's speech on health and family welfare, not one of them mentions population stabilization. It has become a radioactive word, and I'm afraid that we have got to rethink this. I remember I led the Indian delegation to the first World Conference on the Human Population in Bucharest in the early 70s. And what we need again, we need a clear-cut population policy. I presented the first policy to Parliament in 1976. It has been revised many times over. We need a massive public educational program, also educational program for our institutions. We need a massive condom distribution program, without which you cannot control this problem, and that will also help in fighting the dreaded disease of HIV. And we need to use the latest contraceptive technology. The women need to be empowered. As long as the women of India are not empowered, this family problem will never be solved. So they must have access to contraceptive technology. They must be able to say how many children they want to have. They cannot just become children bearing machines without their will. So sir, it needs a whole mindset. It needs an entirely new philosophy, and this has got nothing to do. This must cut across party or religious or caste or any other line. There has to be a commitment, a national commitment to population stabilization. That is my sincere hope and my advice to the Finance Minister and my submission to the whole House. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Karan Singh ji. Now, Sri Chandan Mitra.